I'm the chapter president for the Access Users Group Eastern Time, which meets at 9 o'clock on the third Friday of almost every month of the year. We will not be meeting next month as I'll be on vacation, but we will meet again in August and then every month after that. So the presenter today is Mike Wolfe. He's a former Army officer who's been developing an Access and SQL Server since 2007. He's got a degree in computer science from the United States Military Academy. He is the president and owner of his own software development company and is a constant contributor to Stack Overflow. And he also has a blog at nolongerset.com. So, Mike, I'd like to pass it over to you if you'd go ahead and start presenting, and look forward to our presentation.
Okay, let me see what I need to do to share my screen. Here we go. Okay, is everybody seeing that now?
Yep.
Okay, let me just double check and make sure I've got the recording working on my end. Looks like we're good that way. So my talk today is on combo boxes, and before I get started, I'd like to thank Dale Fye for giving me the opportunity to present you with today's topic. As he said, my name is Mike Wolfe. I write daily articles about Access and VBA at nolongerset.com. So got quite a few things I want to cover here, so we'll just keep going. Okay. So I'm just going to go through these pretty quickly. Dale already kind of gave you my my background, basically everything that's on this slide. So here's what you can expect today. In my last Access user group presentation, I went into detail about how to implement the with events modifier to handle control events from within class modules. So if you're not familiar with the with events keyword, I highly recommend you review that presentation after we're done here today. With that said, I'm not going to be going into nearly as much code detail as I did during that presentation. I am going to have the sample database available for download from my website, so you'll be able to go in and look at all of the code in detail and see exactly how everything's working. There's quite a few edge cases that get handled in some of these class modules. So I'll kind of show the high level overview, but it would take an awful lot of time to dive into all the little details of each one of these things, and I want to try and cover as many topics as possible. So I'm going to start by quickly going through the slides, then I'll run through some demonstrations and highlight some of the things within the code, and then try and leave some time for Q&A at the end. So this is, I've got a link on the last slide to all the different resources, a copy of the slide deck that I'm showing, the sample database like I talked about, a link to my previous presentation if you want to dive into more detail on the with events modifier, and then some further reading for some of the topics I might touch on today. Okay, so here's the outline. We're going to talk about increasing the combo box's target area. We'll talk about what that is. One of the most popular things to do with combo boxes, cascade them together. And I've got a class module that makes that a little bit easier to do. Show you some progressive filtering, also known as search as you type. Talk about lazy loading and why that could be important and why that can help with performance. And then finally, my favorite technique that I want to show is multi-column progressive filtering. So this is search as you type, but covering all of the columns in your dropdown. So before we get into the advanced techniques, I want to provide a little bit of context to make sure we're all on the same page. So I want to go through some of the primary features of the combo box, and this is going to help set the stage as to why some of the techniques I'm going to show later I think are important. So one of the things that you do, one of the primary things is that you display a list of options via the drop-down, and this drop-down helps new users because it shows them the list of options that are available. It helps them discover the information that's in your application. Dale, are you able to mute people? I'm getting an awful lot of echo on my end.
Yeah, let me see what I can do.
Okay, thanks.
I thought I had everybody muted, but
all right. Well, I'm going to keep going on my end. So the other thing that the other big feature is you can enable autocomplete, and this helps experienced users by reducing the number of keystrokes that are necessary to choose options and enter data quickly into the system. You got a way to select hidden ID fields, and finally, the thing that I like the most about a combo box control is that it's optimized for both keyboard interfaces and mouse interfaces. Most other controls either work better for one interface or the other. For example, text boxes work better for keyboard interfaces, while checkboxes and radio buttons are better for mouse interfaces. But the combo box really works great for either one. So collectively, these features promote two key objectives of data-driven applications, which are discovery, the user's ability to find the information they're looking for, and efficiency, the user's ability to perform their tasks as quickly as possible. So the techniques I'm going to demonstrate are specifically intended to boost these two key objectives, discovery and efficiency. Okay, so combo box target area. When we talk about a target area, it refers to the area of the screen where you need to click with the pointer to perform some action. When we're trying to increase the target area, we need to think in terms of the actions that we want to perform. With combo boxes, we have two primary actions that we want to facilitate. Drop down, so in other words, displaying that list of options that are available to the user, and then autocomplete, which is one of the main benefits of a combo box. And it's easy to take advantage of that feature with an empty combo box. You click into it and you just start typing. But a combo box that already has data in it, if you want to change that selection, then you have to select all the characters in there. And to do that with the default behavior, it requires a click and drag with the mouse. So a couple of techniques to increase the combo box target area, to make sure you've got labels that are attached to the combo boxes. That allows you to click on the label in order to send focus to the combo box, and then handling some of the events associated with clicking on it. So here's a quick demo that is, I think, going to make it a little bit easier to see what I'm talking about here. So on the left side, we have the default behavior. And so when you want to get the combo box to drop down, you have to hit this little target here. With this enhanced version, you can click on the label, you can click anywhere inside of the combo box, and it'll force the drop down. So by increasing the target area, it just makes it faster and easier for your users to get to that functionality. They don't have to hit this relatively small target. So cascading combo boxes. This is a favorite target on the forums. One thing that I want to talk about is the difference between fixed and dynamic data hierarchies. So a fixed data hierarchy is where you have well-defined levels for each set of your data. So, for instance, the United States has census-designated places, and those places are broken down by they belong to one of the 50 U.S. states, and then within each state there are a certain number of counties, and then with each of those counties there are a certain number of census-designated places. So for instance, here you've got Oregon, Pennsylvania, and Rhode Island. And if you drill down into Pennsylvania, then you see the counties that are in Pennsylvania. And if you choose Allegheny, you drill down and you see all the different places, census designated places within that county. So this is different than a, why is this not? This is different than a dynamic data hierarchy. The main difference between the two is that in a fixed hierarchy, you've got the well-defined levels, and everything that's on level 1 is related to each other. Everything on level 2 is related. With a dynamic data hierarchy, you've got an arbitrary number of levels, and this level 3 subfolder down here may or may not have anything to do with this level 3 subfolder here, or a level 3 subfolder that's down somewhere else. So this kind of data structure is better represented by a tree control, like what you see in the File Explorer window, versus cascading combo boxes, because there's not really a category that you would apply to a level 1 item in a dynamic data hierarchy. Okay. So again, the combo boxes work best with the fixed hierarchy. And this would be where you would choose the state, and then as you choose the state, then the county box would get updated so that it only shows the counties that are applicable to that state. And then when you choose the county, the same thing, the places would only be those places that are applicable to that county within that state. So I'm going to demonstrate a couple different techniques after we go through the slides. But the one thing I want to highlight is the last few days I worked on trying to simplify how you can set up these cascading combo boxes. And to do that, I created a class module where I'll demonstrate this in the code later. It doesn't really require it's a single line of code to set up multiple cascading combo boxes. And the way that you do that within your row source is you use this the square brackets, and then you put just a single number in there. And so in this case, this number here, when the combo boxes are run through this class module, it's going to replace this special syntax here with the value from the first combo box in the cascade. So I'll get to that later on in the when we get into the demo portion. So progressive filtering, this is where you search as you type, and the idea is that as you enter text into your combo box, you dynamically update the row source so that the options that are available to the user are restricted to just those things that match what the user has already typed into the combo box. And you can, since you're dynamically updating the row source, there's not really any limit to what you can do with this. So you can do different fuzzy matching algorithms where you do approximate string matching using SoundX, for example, which is a phonetic algorithm for indexing names by sound. This is one that's specific to the English language. One that is more a language-independent algorithm would be the Levenstein distance algorithm. There are other edit distance algorithms. This was one that Alessandro Grimaldi just presented not too long ago. So it's still top of mind for me. All right, and here's...
Thank you, Mike.
Yeah, no problem, Alessandro. So here's the a quick demonstration of kind of what it looks like, and you see as you type in to the combo box, the options that are available automatically get restricted based on the text that gets entered. And for this one, again, I've got another class module that makes the implementation of this really simple. And the key to making that implementation work is this special syntax where you pass in a double asterisk. So what happens as the user types in text into the combo box, that text, let me get the laser pointer out, the text is going to get inserted right in between these asterisks. So you can restrict this based on whatever field you want to. Okay, this next technique, to better understand this concept, I want to use a metaphor from the real world. So how about Walmart? Walmart is big. Every physical location has thousands, if not tens of thousands of products. So I want you to humor me for a minute. I want you to close your eyes and imagine that you're walking into Walmart. And if you've never been to Walmart, just imagine walking into the biggest department store that you've been to. As you walk in, the friendly greeter says, "Can I help you find something?" "Yes," you say, "I know exactly what I'm looking for." But before you can get the next word out, the greeter starts helping. AA batteries are in aisle 7. AAA batteries are in aisle 7. Aardvark lunchboxes are in aisle 24. Aaron Rodgers action figures are in aisle 16. ABBA CDs are in aisle 13. You decide it's going to be faster to just wander around the store until you find what you're looking for. But that's not how this works. ABC flashcards are in aisle 11. Abdominal exercise equipment is in aisle 19. You see, you can't even walk past the greeter until he finishes telling you where every single one of the products in that store is located. When you have tens or hundreds of thousands of options in the drop-down box of your combo, you could be doing the same thing to your users. So the idea behind lazy loading is that when the form first opens, you don't have anything at all in the combo box, and as the user enters text into the combo box, once they put in a minimum number of characters, then you start filtering and making the options available. And this, when you're dealing with a combo box that could have, as I said, hundreds of thousands of records in it, the combo box itself is only going to display 65,536. So there's no point in having more than that in there anyway. And your users certainly aren't going to be scrolling through that many records to look for them. So when you've got that many records, you're better off just setting the row source, clearing the row source when the form opens, and only filling it in once the user has typed a few characters. Okay, so this is the last one from the slides. This is multi-column progressive filtering. And this is probably my favorite of all the combo box techniques that I'm going to show. So using this technique, the text you type into the combo box will filter all of the columns in the dropdown and not just the first visible one. So here's the little demo is going to start over. So you're looking for Chicago's airport, and this is a list of all the 3-letter airport codes. Using this this technique, it's going to, as you type in the letters, it's going to look for matches in any of the fields in the dropdown. Okay, so let me. That's it for the slides. Let me switch over to the sample database. Okay, so we're going to start out. This is the target size demo that I showed at the very beginning. So as I pointed out, when you just click on the label of a typical combo box, it doesn't drop down. You have to get the mouse over here. Now, if you want to take advantage of the autocomplete and start typing something else, if you click on a normal combo box, it's going to put the cursor in the middle of the text, and you start typing, and it's not going to do what you want. Here, just with a single click, you can immediately start typing. When you come over here, if you have, say you've got multiple words, one thing that you can do a double click to select the current word and the default behavior, and you have to do the click and drag. Again, that's something that your average user probably isn't used to, and so some of these techniques don't seem like a big deal to us the way we would use a combo box, but when you watch users go through, you watch people do stuff long enough, you realize that this is kind of a minor source of frustration. It's not anything that they will complain about or say anything about, but I think it's a nice extra touch to then be able to immediately
Mike, can you tell us what's enhanced on that one again? I missed that.
Yeah, so the difference here is that, and this, when you download this, it's gonna, I think it'd be easier to play around with it a little bit. If I just click into the enhanced one a single time, it immediately drops down the list of options. If I do that on the original one, then I have to make a separate trip over. I have to hit this smaller area. So that the target area for dropping down the combo box is this small rectangle here. On the enhanced one, I can click on the label and that'll drop it down. I can click inside here and that'll drop it down. So in this case, the target area is basically this whole section here. I can click anywhere in that section,
Gotcha.
and it'll force a drop down. And the second thing that it does is it also automatically selects the text. So if I want to choose a different option here and I want to just use the mouse and then start typing, I can do a single click here and it selects the whole thing, and now I can start typing. If I do the same thing with the original one, when I do a single click, it doesn't select it. So if I start typing, it's going to type at the beginning of the word. If I go to the beginning, I need to select all of it and clear it out before the autocomplete is going to start working.
And how does it work when you tab into it?
So when you talk about when it's empty.
Now I'm just curious when you're not using the mouse.
Oh, yeah. When you're not using the mouse, basically the functionality is pretty much the same, because as you tab into either one, it's going to select the entire word. So there's really not much difference. The default behavior is what you would want from that. So it doesn't really have to do anything special in that situation. So this is something that, as you're looking at the database, one of the things that, this is something that I had put together years ago and I've used for a long time, but there are a couple additional requirements to set this up if you had hidden fields. So see if I choose extra large here. So this is kind of a standard combo box, and if you single click in here, then it selects all the text. In this one, we've got there's a hidden bound column, so the actual bound column is is XL. And if I click in here, the way the original function was that I had created, you had to make sure that you told it that there was that what the first visible column was. Otherwise, it would take the data from that hidden column and it would do the selection based on that. So this is the reason I've got this in here in the demonstration is that the difference between these two drop downs in how you call the function is that in the second one there's an optional parameter to say what the first visible column is, and the technique that I'm using here, if I just jump into the code quick, it's not going to do it. So this is just a handy thing that I use sometimes if I've kind of moved away from this because I've been doing more and more with the with events keyword in class modules. But when I first started overriding a lot of the default behaviors, what I'd want to do is I'd want to be able to apply a function to multiple controls at once. So you can, there's a couple different ways you can call the function. You can, when you're handling it on the, in here you can set an event procedure and then call it from code. Or if it's, as long as it's a public function, you can call it directly from within the property sheet. And the one advantage to calling it from within the property sheet is that you can assign that to multiple controls all at the same time, and then you can set them all at once. The problem with doing that is that if you're referring to that control, each of these controls has a different name. So the shortcut that I used is to pass the form.activeControl property, and that just allows you to then set that for multiple controls all at the same time. So then when you're implementing it, you can go through, you select a bunch of controls, and then you can enter them all at once, and then each one is going to be referencing the correct control. They're all going to be referencing themselves. All right, so like I said, I don't actually, there's some limitations with that, and again, you've got to remember that when you're dealing with, you have to call it differently depending on whether or not the first column is hidden. So what I did is I improved on that a little bit. So this is the same functionality. We're just calling it differently now. So now you see there's no events that are set up in here, and instead, if we go in to the load event of the form, we're just initializing a new class module. So this is the class module. This is what's going on kind of behind the scenes. So again, I'm not going to go into a whole lot of detail, but this is the general, how this generally works. When you go into the combo box, whether that's because you're clicking on it or because you tabbed into it, it's going to check to see if that first visible column is empty. And if it's empty, then the control, the combo box itself is empty, then it's going to force a drop down. Otherwise, if it's not empty, it's going to check to see whether you had a single click or a double click in there. So if you just single click in there, the selection length is going to be 0, and the selection start is going to be something somewhere other than the very beginning of the string. Then we're going to set the selection start to the beginning and select the entire text within that string. And the reason that we don't have to tell it what the first visible column is because we have this private function in there that looks at the column widths, and it determines what the first visible column is based on those column widths. These comments here with the 3 arrows, if any of you are familiar with the Python programming language, they have a concept called doc tests, documentation tests. And the idea is that you can both document and test your code in a single line. And so I borrowed that syntax. And so what this is doing is these are a bunch of tests that you can run, and it's showing what the result is going to be if you call this function and pass it these parameters. So I've got an article on my site. If you search for doc tests, you can find that article where I go into detail about how that works, and I've got all the code in that other article. Okay, so here's the cascading combo boxes. Again, as you go through from one place to the next, this is what the combo box would look like if we didn't have this in here. So for instance, if you want to look up Springfield, figure out where the Simpsons live, there's lots of Springfields. In fact, there's 24 Springfields in the United States. So, and again, this is a lot of options to be sorting through. By using the cascading combo boxes, you can just narrow it down by state and then by county and by place. So let's look at that quickly and see what that looks like. So this is kind of the typical approach to cascading combo boxes. In the after update event of the first combo box, the state combo box, we're setting the county and the place combo boxes, the values to null. We're clearing the row source from the place combo box, and then we're setting the row source on the county one using the value that was in the state combo box that just got set. And same thing in the county combo box, after that gets updated, we don't do anything to the state, but we clear out the place combo box, and then we set that row source to be equal to filter based on the state and the county combo box values. Now, I'd said that one of the things that I had done recently is I had changed how that works. So just show you that this is still doing the same thing. And this is working a little bit differently now, though. So now the code that we need to implement the cascading combo boxes is basically 2 lines. So we initialize a module level variable using this with events class, and then we just call the cascade method, and then we can pass at least 2 combo boxes, and it'll take up to 4 combo boxes, or up to 5 combo boxes actually. So let's just jump into the code quickly to see what that's doing. So when I initially started working on this, I was going to use the same kind of technique that I did in my with events class, where I kept a collection of controls, and I had a self-referencing. There's a bunch of self-referencing code within the class module. You can go back and look at that presentation to see how that works. And I started doing that same thing here, and it made it unnecessarily complex. I decided you really aren't going to be cascading more than 5 combo boxes, and if you had for some reason the need to do more than 5, you can look through the code, and it's relatively easy to expand this beyond 5 if you needed to. But what's happening is that in the after update event of each one of the combo boxes, it's calling this update combos function, and it's clearing the values of all the subsequent combo boxes, and then it's clearing the row source for all the subsequent combo boxes. And then let's see if the value. Okay, and then we're doing a check to make sure that the current combo box is not null, and if it is null, then we're setting the row source. And when we set the row source, what we're doing is we're looping through all of the previous combo boxes, grabbing their value, and then replacing any instances of 0, 1. So this is a 0-based index where square brackets with a 0 in there refers to the value of the first combo box in the cascade. If there's a 1 in the square brackets, that refers to the value in the second combo box within the cascade, and so on. So I saw a question pop up in the chat. Let me see if I can get to that. Yeah, I'm not having trouble getting to the chat. I don't use WebEx a whole lot. Can somebody just, the question came up. You want to just read that? I think it might have been Alessandro. Looked like it was a question about the...
You said you can go back to that presentation, but I don't know which presentation. Maybe.
Yeah. So when we get to the very end, there's going to be a link to a site on my to a web page on my site, and that's gonna have a link back to that previous presentation. So you'll be able to get to it from that site, and I'm going to put that up at the end. You'll see that, and actually, if you just go to nolongerset.com right now, it should have automatically. I had scheduled it to publish, so it should be the most recent article on the home page there. Should have a link back to that previous presentation. Okay, so next up is progressive filtering. Okay, so this is the filter as you type, and with the naive approach, if all you're doing is updating the row source, then you start bumping into different edge cases. So one thing that you bump into is the autocomplete. So if I press N, it's going to autocomplete the rest of the that value, and so now it's showing it's using this entire text here to filter, and it's only showing the state of Nebraska. And if I continue typing and I type in new, now it shows all those other things that match the new. The problem now is that if I press the down arrow key, say I wanted to get to New Mexico, as soon as I press the down arrow key here, it's going to select New Hampshire, and it's going to update the filter. So the improved approach here is to allow for the fact that the autocomplete could happen, and to only use the characters that the user has actually typed to do the autocomplete, or to do the filtering. And so now if I want to search for the Dakotas, we have North and South Dakota that pop in. And if we've got an overwhelming number of items in the list, then we can restrict this so that it only shows items once we get a certain number of characters in there.
So,
Okay.
Mike, are you turning autocomplete off on some of these?
Nope. The autocomplete is staying on the entire time. What's different about this versus the naive approach is that here, this is just we're taking the entire text here and doing the filtering based on the auto-completed text. And what I'm doing down here is I'm only using the characters that the user selected or that the user entered. So I'm basically, as the combo box is changing, anything that's selected, so I'm looking at the select start and the select length, and so anything that's selected after that point, I'm assuming it's this behavior, and so I'm only looking at these first unselected characters. So I'm looking at the N, and then as I type in the E, now I'm just looking at the NE, so it's matching Connecticut, Maine. And then as I type in another character, and then the other thing that it does is it is careful not to update as you're going through and using the up and down arrow keys to choose options within the combo box. So let's just look at that real quick. Okay, so this code down here is the code that goes along with kind of that naive approach, and then here's the more sophisticated approach here, and this is the initialize command. So it's doing a bunch of things. It's handling the enter event, it's handling the after update, the on change, the on key up. So it's doing some things to handle all those different edge cases, pressing the up arrow key, pressing the down arrow key. If the user presses escape, that's another thing that we need to do to add some special handling for. And I'm just going to jump to these last two real quick so we leave some time for questions at the end. So this is the lazy loading option. And this one is, again, if you have a lot of options in your text box, in your combo box, this is the source of a lot of performance problems on forms. If you've got multiple combo boxes on a form and each one is pulling tens or hundreds of thousands of records down, and depending on where it's pulling them from, especially as more and more applications are moving to Azure and the data is being stored in the cloud, there's a bigger cost to pull that information down. So this becomes a more important technique as more of that data moves to places where it's a little bit slower to access. You don't want to pull down any more data than you have to. So this is a good way as you start migrating some of your applications to take advantage of some of those online storage solutions. There's probably going to be some performance problems that are going to creep in that maybe were never an issue when you were running on a local copy of Access or a local version of SQL Server, not necessarily local to the computer, but on the local area network. So being able to not load anything until a certain number of characters is entered. So you see, this is a simple example, but without the lazy loading, we would have pulled in all 50 states at the beginning, and instead I waited until the user entered 3 characters, and so it only pulls over 2 items. So it's a massive reduction in the amount of data that has to get passed back and forth, while still providing discoverability for the user and also having the autocomplete as well. Okay. Now these last three, I'm not jumping into the code right away because they're all basically using the same class module. They're just taking advantage of different aspects of it. So this was the demonstration that I showed earlier. So if you're looking for the Chicago airport, you're not going to find it by typing in Chicago, because the Chicago airport codes don't start with a C. So instead, now we can still use the first visible column can still be that airport code, the 3-digit airport code, but we can set up the filtering so that it looks in all the different columns. So now it finds these 2 Chicago airports, and now we can press the up and down arrow keys to move back and forth and choose the option there. So let's jump into the code. And then this is all the code that's necessary then to enable all that. So all of the details, all the hairy edge cases that we're handling, those are all tucked away inside of the class module. We just have to call this once, and actually this code, the second code here is boosting the target size. So this code is not actually necessary to implement the multi-column filtering. It's doing that strictly based on this airport lookup as new combo lookup, and then we're doing the setting the initialize there. So the way that's the other part of the implementation is in the row source itself. So if I open up the query that's running in the background, and I apologize, this might be a little bit hard to see, but let's see if I can do, there we go. That hopefully is a little bit bigger. We're using these double asterisks. So anywhere that there's a double asterisk, the nice thing is that this is going to do the wildcard search whether you have text in there or not, and then we can use a regular expression to, when the combo box loads initially, we store that initial row source, and then as the user types text in, we do a regular expression replace on the original row source, and everywhere that it finds these asterisks, it replaces the current text that the user has entered, and that's what allows them to allows the search to work. So again, what I really like about this is that for all the complexity that's going on, it's really easy to implement, and that's one of the things I like about class modules and this with events modifier, is that you can build a lot of advanced functionality into your controls without having to recreate that functionality every time you're implementing it on a new form. So go ahead.
Mike, real quick, that going back to that, you made a comment. You said when you initially load the combo box or the form, you're storing that.
The form, I guess. Well, so
you're storing the SQL statement for that row source.
Yeah. So what it is. Let me see where it's actually pulling. This is the initialize event. Setting those properties.
So basically, it's when you load the form, the initialize when you initialize the control, it's
Okay.
it's storing that property for the control.
Yeah, I forgot about this. So this was one of the edge cases I was talking about. This class supports having other code that might make changes to that row source in between when the form is loaded and when the options are dropped down. So we handle the enter event. So when the user clicks into the combo box, it's at that point that we check to see what the current row source is. If you're implementing the lazy loading feature, then you can specify a row source that you want to be there because you want to have the row source cleared out initially. So you would specify that row source in code. But so it's when you enter into the combo box, that's when it's pulling the row source and it's saving that row source information. And then as the user types text into it, that's when it's doing the replacement of those double asterisks with the user's text as they type in.
Okay, great. Thanks.
Sure. All right, so I'm just gonna throw up the link to where you can get. This is the permanent link to get access to the resources with the link back to the previous presentation that I did, a copy of these slides, a copy of the sample database. All that stuff is available there. So we still got a few minutes. We got a little bit of a late start, so I'll happily take however many questions people have. I don't know what Dale's schedule is like. I don't want to hold him up, but I'll happily answer as many questions as I can.
And Mike,
I'm good for a while. Good for a bit.
I got a quick question. I missed the difference between the double and single asterisk. I use single asterisk a lot, but what is the double asterisk doing differently?
Yeah, so what let me get back here. What the double asterisk is doing is it's, let me see if I can get to where it's doing the, it's supporting the regular expression replacement. So the reason I have the double asterisks in there is it makes it a lot easier than to do the to find all the places within the SQL and then replace them with put that user text in there. So the double asterisk isn't something that you would use normally. I'm taking it to make it easier for the implementation of the code.
So you could, I think the question there, I mean, it achieves two things. One is it gives you that that wildcard character to begin with.
Correct. Yep.
As the first thing. So you're going to have the wildcard to begin with, but then it gives you the ability to search for that distinct double asterisk. I mean, theoretically, you could use any character or string of characters to use in your regex. But the advantage is that by using the double asterisk, it gives you the initial results is you're going to get all the wildcard search, but in the long term, you can search for the double asterisk and then replace that with whatever new string you want in that filter.
Correct. Yeah, absolutely.
Hey, Mike, this is Phil Graham. I got a question for you. When you had I guess it would be the dynamic filtering or the enhanced filtering at the end, would that work? Would that work when you've got 1-2 million records?
Yeah. So the
case I'm looking at is, let's say you've got, first name, last name, city, state, zip fields that you want to search through, let's say on a customer table. and you want to do like, kind of like your Chicago demonstration where you
Right.
pull up, let's say, the customer ID.
Yeah.
Is it efficient, with that big of a file size?
I mean, it's as efficient. It's as efficient as it's going to be whenever you're doing a search with a like where you've got the two asterisks before and after. The problem with that search in particular is that you can't really use an index. It doesn't really benefit as much from an index when you've got the asterisk in the middle, because it's then searching throughout the string.
Mm-hmm.
So it's one of those things you'd have to kind of test it. I mean, there's nothing about the combo box technique itself that's going to slow it down. It's just those kinds of searches are inherently slower because you can't take advantage of the efficiencies of indexing that you normally would be able to.
Understood. And related to that, I mean, I saw that you do, the dot drop down
Mm-hmm.
in your code. What's the opposite to get the drop down to go back up? I've never been able to figure that one out.
Yeah.
I mean, do you do like not dot drop down, or how
I'm
do
trying to
you
think.
code for
I
that?
think I actually I think I asked a question about that on Stack Overflow years ago, and I think I'd have to go back and look, because I did get some kind of an answer, and it was, if I recall, it had something to do with there was a send keys hack where
Okay.
it's
Yeah.
it wasn't. Yeah, it's not very clean, as I recall. I've got
Yeah.
code.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I've got code in that with events presentation that I was talking about, just to identify whether the combo box is dropped down, and that you can do with like half a dozen API calls, but actually toggling the drop down and forcing it to not drop down is
Or drop back up, if
drop
you
back
will.
up, exactly.
Drop
Yeah.
up.
Drop up.
Or pick up.
Yeah, that it's surprisingly difficult to do.
Okay, that's always been a curiosity of mine, if anybody knew how to do that.
Yeah, like I said, I think if you search on Stack Overflow, I think I may have even asked the question about how to do it, and yeah, there was some answer, but I don't think it was very elegant.
Okay, great, thanks.
Sure.
Mike, how does this work in a continuous form? Like just in general, the classes?
Yeah. That's something that I don't know how well they work off the top of my head, because I'm trying to think of any times that I've implemented these classes specifically on a continuous form. Where I tend to use these a lot is on unbound forms, especially for reports, where I'm collecting data to filter a report. I use it there, or for lookups, where it's an unbound control that's doing lookups. What you would, generally, what I would do, I think it might need a little bit of additional work, the class modules, but I don't think it would be unmanageable. I think the way that it would, generally the technique that I've used for those is to union together a query that returns the current result, and then all the other options. Then you do run into the question, especially if you've got the continuous forms definitely adds some challenges there, especially if you've got multiple, if the combo boxes are bound to a hidden ID field, then you have to be careful that when you update the row source that it doesn't blank out all the other combo boxes in the other records. So there's definitely some extra challenges there. I think it's doable, but I don't think that I don't think the class currently handles that real well. That was something that I thought about actually a couple days ago, and I already had so much in. I thought, because the Cascade class I kind of wrote from scratch a few days ago, which actually is the combo lookup class I've used for several years and is pretty well, pretty tried and tested. The Cascade is a lot newer, so there's probably some edge cases that I haven't cleaned up in there yet. But a lot of the edge cases have been handled already in the combo lookup class.
Well, and I think you might be able to deal with look at the video I presented on using cascading combo boxes in a continuous form a couple of months back, where you basically include a text field over top of your combo box to display the current value, and then you use the combo box. That way you can reset the combo box row source all you want, and it won't affect the visibility of other rows in your continuous form, because what you're actually seeing in those other rows is the value via a join in the record source of the form, rather than just the row source of the combo box.
Right.
So, I think you could use this technique in conjunction with that methodology, and achieve the same thing. And what I do in that method is I use the got focus event of the text box to set the focus to the combo and drop it down.
Right.
So that you can do the type, but you could do the I think you could do something along the same lines. Although the issue there becomes if you're going to be typing in the combo box, it's actually hidden by the text box in my implementation. So that would be interesting to see how that works.
Yeah, I thought that it's been a while since I've used that technique, because I have done that before, where you have one field that's kind of behind the other one. I think in that specific situation with combo boxes on continuous forms, it's been long enough, I don't recall, but I thought that it would basically the control that had the focus, I thought it brought that up in front of other controls while the control has the focus. Is that not the case? It might not be.
I don't recall that being the case.
No.
But I'd have to think about it. I have to go back and look at it in my sample app.
Okay.
All right. Well, if nobody has any other questions, Mike, I want to thank you for your presentation. I look forward to taking a look at your code. I historically have not used a lot of class modules, and I always like to dig into other people's code and see what they've done in order to implement those. So it'll be fun digging through your sample database.
Yeah, hopefully I spent quite a bit of time trying to clean up, because a lot of this code is stuff that I've kind of used myself for years, and then you go to publish it and you think, well, I can't publish it like this. I need to what if people actually look at it? So I tried to clean it up, and hopefully it's well documented. I do have comments. I just recently added comments to my blog, so if you've got any questions about the sample database or about today's presentation, you can throw them in there, and I'll try and keep an eye on that.
Sounds good. Just a quick note. I mentioned it at the beginning of today's session. We will not be meeting next month, but we will meet again in August. And I don't have a topic yet for that presentation, but I will announce that as soon as I can. I'll put it out on the accessusergroups.org calendar, and we'll announce it out on LinkedIn and any other sites as well. So I appreciate y'all joining us today. We had a great group today, and I look forward to seeing you again in the future. Thanks, Mike.
Thanks a lot,
Thank
Dale.
you very much.
Thank you, Mike.
Thanks for sharing.
Thanks, everybody.